Austin, good to see you. Today, we're talking through the 6 questions you should ask an advisor before you retire. Now, of course, you do not need an advisor to retire, but we do recommend you at least make an appointment with one to talk through these questions. And the first question you should ask is, am I financially ready to retire? Financially being the optimal word there.
Yeah, so really I think many folks kind of view retirement as this milestone, right? As soon as I accumulate this bucket of money, I'm
Mm,
good to
yep.
retire. And while that may be partially true, it's definitely not the whole truth. Really, there are so many other facets to a successful retirement, whether it be income planning, distribution planning, tax management, asset location, estate planning, right? It's much more than just once I have this bucket of money, I'm good to go. So just keep that in mind. Be aware
Right.
there are multifaceted pieces here to this puzzle that we have to account for.
Right. So much more than just a number in the bank account. Next question. What income sources will I rely on in retirement and how sustainable are they?
Yeah, this may seem a rudimentary question, right, to ask, but it really is imperative that we're thinking about this because we're transitioning from this very stable W-2 income, right, that we've had for the last 20, 30, 40 years, of course. And this is a big transition. So we need to know where are our sources of income in retirement, right? Is it simply coming from the portfolio? Is it simply coming from Social Security, or do we have a pension as well? Perhaps we have income from a guaranteed source like an annuity. So understanding what are my sources of income, number one, and number two, how stable are they is a very important question to get answers to.
Mhm. And because these questions are all interrelated, it brings us to our next one. How can I minimize taxes on that retirement income?
Yeah, this is a big one. So, a few things here. It's really going to depend on your asset location. And what I mean by that is the tax qualification of our retirement asset base. Of course, we have tax free assets. Those would be things like Roth IRAs. We have the tax deferred asset bucket, which is going to be the most common for folks that have saved over the years, typically in a 401k or IRA. And then that taxable bucket would be things like a brokerage account, right? A non IRA type of investment account. That would be the taxable bucket. So, depending on where your assets are held, that's largely going to determine the taxation and associated tax liability. But also, just keep in mind there are things to shift things around, like potentially Roth conversions throughout your early retirement years as well.
Right. The sooner you start thinking about that, the better. Next question. What, if any, adjustments should I make to my investment portfolio?
Yeah, this is pretty common, I think, to be thinking about is does my portfolio need to be adjusted in some manner? I would argue yes, because as we know, your portfolio should not look the same as it did when you were 30 years old, and even really probably when you're 40 or 50 years old is when you're retiring. Typically, we want to take less risk. In what way does that manifest itself is individual to each person. But also, we want to make sure that we're
Mhm.
generating enough income, right? Whether that's incorporating things like annuities or bonds or structured income notes or various ways, dividend paying stocks, right, to generate this income within the portfolio so that we can live the retirement that we want.
Mhm. Next one is, do I have enough saved to account for inflation and those unexpected expenses that always seem to crop up?
Always, always. This is one of those things I see all the time where we simply in projections see folks not accounting for inflation or not accounting for enough inflation. So this is really important because over a 25, 30, 35-year retirement, it's hard to fathom for a lot of investors and retirement planners, right, how much of an impact inflation can have. I mean, taking 75,000 per year today in 25 years could very easily be 125, 130, 140,000 a year to live. So we need to make sure
Mhm.
that that's built into our projections. And also, one of the big unexpected expenses for many folks is what happens to my retirement plan and my surviving spouse should I have a major health event, right? That can really derail a lot of plans. So we want to make sure that we know, what those results are should they occur.
Right. And that point brings us to our last question. Do I have a plan for long term care? Because 7 out of 10 people will need long term care at some point. And as we take a look at what that will cost, projected out to 2043 here, it's going to be anywhere from $124,000 to $211,000. So if you don't have a plan, this can wipe out your savings.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is the reality, right? The stats are the stats, and the data is there to back it up. That although many of us don't want to think that we'll ever end up in a nursing home or need that type of care, the reality is that many of us will. So we want to make sure that we're accounting for that and those what if realities, right? That should my health deteriorate at the end of life, what does this look like for my retirement plan? Is my surviving spouse going to have enough assets to not only care for myself, but care for, them when we're gone? So these are questions that
Right.
and we wanna
Right.
make sure that we're modeling out, accounting for, because the data tells us that most likely we will find ourselves in this situation.
Mhm. Austin, I always really enjoy talking to you. It becomes increasingly apparent as we talk through these questions why retirement is so much more than just a number in the bank. So, if somebody wants to sit down with you to see if they are ready to retire, what's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, you can give us a call at 919-322-4113 or send us an email at info@patriotwealthnc.com.
Austin, thank you.
Thanks, Aaron.